Alrighty, folks. Alrighty, folks. Part 21 of my collection. Gonna start off with a mighty tome, rather large. It is Gunter Grass's Dog Years. I've yet to read this, and I may never read this. I haven't heard about it. I'm sure it's as fascinating as the blurb. Dog Years, yeah. What's he got against dogs? Is it a bad thing? Whatever. That's about it. Translated by Ralph Manheim. Boy, he did a lot of work. Okay, here's a great work. Erasmus and the Age of Reformation by Johann Huizinga. And Erasmus, famous Dutch thinker, theologian, critic, humorist, all of that. And this book is very good about Erasmus being a force in the Reformation and being against certain trends and being a humanist. Nowadays, being a humanist is, of course, not very popular move. All right, next up is Günter Grass's most well-known work, The Tin Drum. Read this. It's pretty good. It's not a bad novel. A lot of funny stuff, a lot of serious stuff. And it's about the end of World War II and going through the long Nazi nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare for war contractors and the people that helped build the Nazi war machine, like IBM, Chevrolet, Ford. Heck, Henry Ford was an avowed Nazi and got a medal from him. Okay, this is a great slim volume by Hugo von Hofmannsthal, a great Austrian writer. The Lord Chandos Letter and Other Writings. Some very good short stories in here. And really good stuff. Very imagist work. But also, the prose is excellent. It's very rhythmic and poetic. Good stuff. Highly recommend it. Speaking of poetry, here's a weighty tome. The complete verse of Charles Baudelaire. Introduction and translations by Francis Scarf. I wonder if that E is pronounced. Of course, you have the poems in French. You can read them. Je suis comme le roi d'un pays pluvieux. Oh, that's such a sweet line. I am like the monarch of some rainy kingdom, rich but impotent. Of course, that was in the next line. Riche mais impuissant, jeune et potent, très vieux. Good stuff. Splenarial, Ideal. And you have Le Fleur de Mal and all that stuff. And his Juvenilia even, which is interesting stuff. As good as the Juvenilia of Rimbaud. Of course, he started young. So, heck, most of his early work is Juvenilia, but it's pretty good. All right, next up is a man that we've discussed earlier. Erasmus. There's the famous portrait of him, looking very studious and bundled up. He's cold, baby. Look at the furs, man. That's some drip there, eh? Look at I don't know if that's a necklace or a whatever. That metal thing at the bottom there, but it's pretty good. And he's writing. He's got tiny hands, though. Whatever that means. Praise of Folly is a really outstanding and funny work. It's a classic for a reason, and really, it's an enjoyable read. And it kind of shows Erasmus' knowledge of philosophy and other stuff, and it's very good. Makes you think and it makes you laugh at the same time, which is always a great thing. All right, here's a great volume, Fielding, Jonathan Wild, The Voyage to Lisbon. And, of course, Jonathan Wild is a classic of spoof on the great man theory, the great man in history theory, and it's just great. Fielding really beats the hell out of it. Showing the wholesome uses drawn from recording the achievement of those wonderful productions of nature called great men. I mean, I am telling you, it is just, it's, Fielding is hilarious. I mean, I just can't say enough. Please read Jonathan Wild if you can. And even The Voyage to Lisbon is kind of nice. It's kind of a different foray for him to do so. But it's not bad. It has some nice observations. Good stuff. Okay, here's a great work by Froissart, The Chronicles. Of course, this involves the 100 Years, and it was written around the same time as Chaucer was around, of course. And it talks about the Anglo-French rivalry and the deposition of Edward II and the downfall of Richard II. And chivalry in action in the battles of Sluys, Crécy, Calais, Poitiers, or however you want to say that, are only part of a comprehensive court's eye view. And again, this book is excellent, outstanding, very interesting, a lot of adventure, a lot of noble tales of chivalry and all that stuff. And it's pretty good. It's very good. It's a very good historical source. Very well done. Froissart was an insider. He was there. I mean, he not writing about something based on just manuscripts and stuff. Here's a great book, no matter what you think about this guy, Friedrich Engels, The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. Now, of course, some anthropologist came out and said, oh, no. This is all wrong, and it's based on, blah, 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 blah. And he's basically forcing it into a Marxist context. But really what he's doing is he's talking about the origin of the family, private property, and the state as it portends to modern capitalist societies, which basically started, the seeds of this development was basically 18th century to 19th century. So when it really came, and then it got more enforced and more prevalent as time goes. And it's a really interesting book. Even if you don't agree with the general gist of it or some of the ideals that he's got when he's writing it, it's still a very interesting look at analysis of family and the state and private property and all that. It's good. All right, here's a great book by a Polish author named Bruno Schulz, The Street of Crocodiles. And this is a very good, funny, and dare we say sensuous work. And I highly recommend it. You're going to laugh. You're going to enjoy it. There's some creepiness to it, but again, the creepiness is much like Gombrowicz' Ferdy Durka, where perversion is often couched in a very absurdist and funny way. It in no way endorses it, but it kind of paints it out because it is a fact of human life, in our experiences, we have all witnessed things like some of the things they display, but it comes out comical and it's harmless. Okay, this is a nice tome I got, Frances Yates. I love Frances Yates and her The Art of Memory book and several others. And this is a really good one called The Rosicrucian Enlightenment by Frances Yates. And this is really good. It has some great pictures. It talks about Comenius in Bohemia, the RC fraternity, and the Christian unions, Italian liberals, and Rosicrucian manifestos. The Rosicrucian scare in France, of course, they tapped it down there. The Rosicrucian for in Germany, the Palatine publisher, basically wanting the marriage of a certain English and whatever. And John Dee, of course, John Dee, and scrying, a royal wedding, Princess Elizabeth of Heidelberg, of course. And this is great stuff. She got married to Frederick V, Frederick V, Elector Palatine, and the Princess Elizabeth at their marriage. Yeah. A lot of good plates in this that are from the times, and I love that kind of stuff. But the gist of this book is very, it's solid. I mean, it's a solid historical data. Francis Bacon, Under the Shadow of Jehovah's Wings. Again, no one is left untouched in this, and the appendix is really good too. This is Frances Yates is a very important historian, and I wish she would get more credit than she did. She's not just into mysticism and all that other stuff. There's a historical backdrop to everything she's talking about. Okay, here's another one. C.P. Fitzgerald, The Birth of Communist China, which was a great birth. Of course, Communist China was a great thing. Talks about the revolution period, Mao's march, much other stuff, and how it began to develop into a society. It's really good stuff. I mean, China was backwards before the revolution, and then thanks to World War II, which mobilized them, it became a modern society that it is today. Not exactly blowing kisses at China. I'm just saying that compared to that time, it wasn't. All right. This is Epicurus's Letters, Principal Doctrines, and Vatican Sayings. This is a pretty interesting, a slim volume. It's only about 90 pages, and you get a lot of his letters and stuff like that, and it's very interesting. Epicurus is a very unfortunately, we get the term Epicurean, gourmand, or someone who's a slave to their senses and shit like that, and stuff like that part. And it's not like that. Epicurus was actually pretty much a holy man. He wasn't a profligate. He wasn't around, with prostitutes and stuff. He just stressed the sensual in life, which is important. Our eyes, what we see, what we hear, what we touch, things like that. It's very important. Here's another one. Another great one by Erasmus. The Education of a Christian Prince. Now, by Desiderius Erasmus. Now, this is like 100% opposite of Machiavelli's Il Principe, or The Prince. Machiavelli was talking about real conditions and how to, and real choices that princes had to make, whereas Erasmus here is not doing a bad thing here. He's not obfuscating or anything, but he's doing something the best way to educate what he feels is a Christian or holy or good prince, and that was his aim. And this is the prince must avoid flatterers. There we go. Stuff like that. It's a moral treatise about statecraft and how a prince should be, what a prince should know, and what he should learn before he becomes a prince. Erasmus was very much a man for free thought, freedom of speech, notebook burnings, all that other stuff. And at his times, that was not a very popular view. I will say, at the least. Okay, here's a great book by one of my favorite authors, John Ruskin, Under This Last and Other Writings. And this is great stuff. I mean, The Roots of Honor, The Two Boyhoods, The Work of Iron, The Nature of Gothic, The King of the Golden River. Ruskin is just an incredible writer, and what he writes about, he writes about trends in art and other stuff and society and culture, and he mends it together pretty well. I like Ruskin a lot. His eyes are very open, and he has a very wide view, and he somehow brings it all together in a very nice way. Gotta appreciate that, and he writes very well. Okay, here's a great classic novel by Ippolito Nievo, Confessions of an Italian. And turbulent times in beloved Italy lurches from conquest by Napoleon to embark on its journey towards unification. With great verve and humor, he recounts his own adventures all over the emerging nation his boyhood in the castle of Frata with its many curious inhabitants. This is a very, very interesting and entertaining book. I recommend it to anyone. It's a weighty tome. It's about 900 pages worth, but it's worth it. It's pretty much, if you want to appreciate Italy during this time, I believe it was the 19th century. It's really a fascinating work. I love Italy, the country itself. It's a beautiful country and beautiful people. Just as much as I love France, which I love too. And I don't have any hate for any countries except for one, and I won't name it. Or two, maybe three. Okay. Here's a classic, very humorous novel by Max Beerbohm. Zuleika Dobson. And if you've ever been an undergraduate at a college, you should read this. You will laugh. You will enjoy it. You'll identify with a lot of the incidences in here, of course. As a talented writer, Beerbohm really foregrounds that stuff. And yeah, of course, in college, there's so much minutia and so much nonsense you have to go through. But this work is really incredibly funny, and it's great. It's a joy to read. Highly recommend it. Okay, here's one that is something that I bought that I can't believe that it was available, but it's a classic travel writing, and it's a romantic in Spain. And having been to Spain, I can say that Théophile Gautier, great French poet, writer, all that, he really does a good job. I mean, of course, Spain has changed since the time he wrote this. I believe it was in the 19th century, in the 1800s. When was this? Yeah, this was written in... Théophile Gautier. Yeah, this was written in the 1840s. And it was a time of some tensions and upheavals in Spain. So it's a very interesting work. Highly recommend it. Okay, here's a book that I read about 2 years ago. Edward W. Said, God rest his soul, Allah bless his soul, whatever his faith is. I want to honor it because he was a great man. Orientalism, and this is a great work. This is a really outstanding work. Oriental structures and restructures and the scope of Orientalism. And when you read this book, when you get through reading this book and it dawns upon you, you go watch any news network or read any newspaper from the West and see how they discuss, people from the countries in the Far East and even the Middle East or anything like that, Arab and Asian countries, or even South America and the kind of paternalism and the nonsense that they talk about everybody. They orient everyone, but especially the Orientalism involves mostly the Arabs and Muslims and people in India and people in China and all that other stuff. And even in Southeast Asia and Indonesia and that other stuff. And it's really interesting. He totally hits the nail on the head with all of it. Okay, next up, another book by Freud. I like this little painting. Sigmund Freud, The Joke and Its Relation to the Unconscious. And this is a pretty interesting book. Again, as I said before, love the analysis, love the stories he tells about the individual cases and instances, and his use of literature and art is very good. Now, again, I must say again, and I will beat this to the death, some of his conclusions are wayward, but they are interesting. And I'm not saying I know better than Freud. I'm just saying that perhaps they didn't. Some of his takes from what he's experienced through analysis, may not be 100% valid. That's all. I am no better than Sigmund Freud, and I would never say that. But I just want to say that. Okay, here's a great book. Geoffrey of Monmouth, The History of the Kings of Britain, and this is from the period from, where is it at? I believe it's from 12 to, hold on. Okay. Well, he finished this book in 1136, 12th century. And this goes on the early kings of Britain, goes on the prophecies of Merlin, Maximianus arrives, Elidurus, the dutiful, Diana prophesies to Brutus. Again, this starts all the way back from the Roman incursions into Britain, all the way to Cadwallo flees to Brittany, which is northern France, of course, and Gawain and all that stuff. Arthur is crowned at Silchester. This is a really interesting book, and it's a history, and it was written during the times. I mean, Geoffrey Monmouth died in 1155, so this is an old chronicle, and he was probably a monk. So yeah, the Monmouth book is very interesting. I mean, yeah, it's very interesting, pretty good. All right, next up is a pretty good memoir by Alfred de Musset, the heartbroken one-time lover of George Sand. Confessions of the Child of the Century, Confessions d'un Enfant du Siècle, by Alfred de Musset, and this is from 1923. Pretty good translation. And this is pretty good. This book will be 100 years old next year. Okay, so this is the preface for the whatever to the reader, and this is a very interesting work, very personal, but also gives you a pretty good feel of the times. It's an excellent work, and I really recommend it. Recommend it highly. Good stuff. All right, hey, how about some more Erasmus? 10 colloquies, and basically colloquies. These are basically educational devices. Little dialogues and stuff, or little whatchamajiggers that he wanted to write to basically be informative and educational in a sense, morally and intellectually. And they're good stuff. And they're basically for adults and children. Well, children that can read. At that time, that wasn't very common, except among the very wealthy classes and nobility. All right, here's a great book by Gerald of Wales. And if I say here's a great book, once again, I might slap myself. The Journey Through Wales, the Description of Wales. And this is a very fascinating historical work. This was written, I believe, in the 12th century. It's very good, and you don't even have to be Welsh to appreciate it. It's really incredible. Some of the descriptions of what he witnesses and stuff. Good stuff. All right, here's a book by Duc de Saint-Simon, The Age of Magnificence, Memoirs of the Court of Louis XIV. And let me tell you, if you like royal family gossip, or you like historical stuff from the insider, you will love this book. Because the Duc de Saint-Simon was an insider, and he knew. And this is a really excellent work. I read it probably about 7 years ago. Good stuff. The Age of Magnificence by the Duc de Saint-Simon, Memoirs of the Court of Louis XIV. And boy, let me tell you, they had a good time. The rest of the country, maybe not so much. But the royal court, of course, feasted, and they did well. Okay, here's the book that I talked about before. It's part of the Wild Volume, Voyage to Lisbon. Here's an individual version that I've got, the Penguin one. I love Penguin books. I don't know why. It's a thing. And again, this book is incredibly funny. It is just... I recommend everybody just go out and get it. You will laugh your derriere off. It is just hilarious. Here's another one by Fielding. Going through my Fielding, and then after this I'll be done. Joseph Andrews with Shamelin Related Writings. This is a Norton Critical Editions, which also has some criticism and other stuff in the back, and backgrounds and sources. And this is, of course, a very hilarious book. Can't say enough about it. Fielding is always gold. Now, being the completist that I am, his younger sister, Sarah Fielding, wrote the book The Adventures of David Simple. Now, and a lot of people thought it was, that Henry Fielding wrote it and gave it to her, but that's not true. She wrote it. Of course, she might have talked to him and he gave her advice and stuff. It's a voluminous work, which much like a lot of, it's like 400 pages, yeah. Much like a lot of her brother's work, her older brother's work. It's a good one, though. It's funny, good, well-paced, good stuff. Okay, last but not least, if I can get it out, I'm going to take Sarah out. Pardon, maybe. It's The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. And I have not read this. I look forward to reading it. I look forward to dabbling more into Japanese literature, not just Mishima, but other stuff, other people. And this is a very weighty tome. It's about 600 pages, and I look forward to reading it. I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. And that'll be it for today, folks. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Take care. And that will be all.